Alright, how's it going everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac and here with a video on another tier list. The last time I did one was all the way back with Berserk, at least officially, because I had this like BoJack Horseman tier list that I didn't do. I just did it like, oh shoot, as a little mock-up. But I'm here with another tier list, actually formatted like a tier list, because I realized like they're just literally blocks and rows. Why wouldn't I just do that, right? So I did it like this. And this tier list is for Steins Gate, as you see right here. And it's both Steins Gate 0 and Steins Gate Original, right? I didn't include any of the other media like the Steins Gate linear bounded phenomena, I think is what it's called. And like the romance game or nothing like that or the novels. I just included the first visual novel and its anime and the second visual novel and its anime. Here's all the characters that I could think of at least. I looked through the fandom page that this game has and all the characters that matter to me from the criteria that I set for this. And here's everybody. I didn't count how many characters there were, but it seems like it's a cool 20, maybe 25. So let's get started. And if you haven't seen Science Gate or Science Gate Zero, then I highly recommend watching it or playing it if you haven't, because you're going to need a lot of context for this. But regardless, let's begin. So we have five tiers, right? We have don't know, so this is like the bottom tier where I just don't know any of these characters that were in the fandom page. We have C tier, which not important people, L characters. We have B tier, good characters. A tier, great, relevant, and prevalent characters. And then perfect timeline tier, the best of the best, the creme de la creme. So right here, let's just start with these guys. Shikane Akiha, she's Ferris's mom. Don't really know her, didn't see her in the game. The only time we've seen one of her parents was Ferris's dad, and you'll see him later on. We have Shinichi Nakase, Katsumi Nakase's brother. So she's the girl who was cosplaying friends with Mayuri in Steins Gate Zero, and this is her brother. I don't know him, I never met him, so I had to put him down here, right? Kayano, never met her. I think she's from one of the novels. And Suzuri Imamiya, I don't know her. I think she's from one of the novels. But now we move on to C tier, right? This is where my opinions actually start forming. So at the very, very bottom of C tier is Judy Reyes. She was introduced in Steins Gate Zero. You'll see her in the anime, but for the most part, she's only secluded to those two, right? And I don't like her at all. Out of all the routes that she's in the show, I just don't like her because she's a villain, but she is nowhere near as prevalent as the other villains, like Makise's dad or Alexis Leskinen, right? I think she's just boring, she's bland, she's whack. At best, she would still be at C tier. She would just be like in the middle to the top of C tier, which isn't much to be honest. I'm just gonna put it at the bottom of C tier, which is crazy because I have this guy right here, right? 4 degrees Celsius. Now this guy was an even worse villain because he was just a minor antagonist, like a shonen antagonist of the week, and he showed up during the tournament where Ferris and Okabe were participating in, right? And this guy was a jobber, literal jobber. So why would I put him over Judy? Because I dislike her that much. So 4 degrees Celsius, while you're not better than Judy by much, you're here. Next, we have John Teeter, right? John Teeter's Suzuha. It's honestly not much I can say except that. So I like him more than the other two because I'm just indifferent towards him. So I had to put him here because he is a character. But John Teeter is just literally a plot device. Next, we move on to the Pin Vendor in Steins Gate Original. This guy was also a plot device, but in reality, he's kind of a funny guy. Next, though, we have the Rounders. The Rounders are literally just a bunch of people from CERN who were hired to take out Okabe and his group. But the thing is, we never talked to any of them except for like Moika, but she's not a part of the Rounders. She's just an agent from CERN, like Mr. Braun. And so these Rounders, like, they're nobodies, but they're still characters in the fandom. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll put them on here. And the reason I put them above the vendors because they do something important. They start the Friday the 13th events that carry on for the rest of the game. Friday the 13th changes the plot forever. And this is the whole reason why Okabe starts doing what he's doing. Also, I just like the way that they look with their Hawaiian shirts. They look fire with that. But next, we move on to Kuroki, aka Ferris's butler. This guy, he's cool. I mess with him. He was there taking care of Okabe, Moika, Maho, whether it's in Zero Timeline or not. He's just a nice guy who takes care of Ferris's attendees. Next, we have Amadeus, the AI. Amadeus is a weird one for me because this is literally just Makise, but she's an AI. They're no different, but I don't like Amadeus as much as I like Makise because this is literally fake. I'm not talking to the real one. And Okabe knew that in the anime. In the game, if you indulge him, that's going to lead to the World War III timeline, aka the timeline that Suzuha from Zero tries to stop, right? Gehenna. That's the ending route. So Amadeus to me is just like you're more of a plot device than you are an imitation of a character. So I'm just gonna put you here. While I do like you because you're Makise and you do have some good plot points in Zero, you're just an AI, you know? But moving on, we have Eisuke Urushibara, aka Rukako's father. A very supportive man. I really respect him because he just takes care of his son and just entrusts Okabe to help him be his friend, stuff like that. And no matter what timeline it is, whether Lukaku's a boy or a girl, his father's just very supportive. He's just a nice guy trying to take care of his child. Eisuke Urushibara, I like the way you look. You look like Aizen, but you're actually nice. I'm gonna give you the C tier. And if anything, remind me down below in the comments if I'm missing some plot points for certain characters that can change their tier. But for the most part, I think I remember everything clearly. But that's the end of C tier, non-important characters. Now we move on to B tier, the good characters. Now this might be a little controversial. So the next three characters we have in B tier are Naitanoji, Kairi Kurishima, and Katsumi Nakase. And I'm actually gonna amend their placement and put them in C tier, all three of them. They're gonna be like around before Eisuke, but after Amadeus, because they aren't prevalent enough to be in B tier. I'm gonna amend that later on so you guys will see what the tier list will look like when it's fully updated, because there are some placements here going back and editing it that I don't agree with looking at it, so those three are going to change. Next we have Yuki Amane, and I feel like she should stay here because she is a very prevalent character in Steins Gate Zero. And even if she's not there the whole time, because a Steins Gate Zero's visual novelization, Yuki Amane is a very prevalent character because she's Suzuha's mom and Daru's wife, right? But what's weird about her is that Kaguri is playing Yuki Amane in one timeline, and in the other timeline it's her. But even when she's her, she's just a normal character who doesn't do much. It's just, I'm his wife. I'm gonna end up being his wife. So how do we set up that romance? And it's played for gags for the most part, but not much comes from her. She's just Yuki Amane, and she's there because the writers were like, that's his wife. Why not include her, right? So I feel like she's not that great, but she is important to the story. So I do got to put her like at least relevant to the story tier, aka B tier. But next we have Kaguri Shina. Kaguri Shina is a very perplexing character because just like Yuki Amane, she's here, but she doesn't need to be because she doesn't have that same salience that Yuki did because she was mentioned in original, just not by name because they didn't know what she would be yet. Kaguri didn't need to be here at all because she's Mayuri's adopted child. She got brought back by Suzuha, and then she just causes a world of chaos. Because Suzuha accidentally left her behind all the way back in like the 2000s, she grew up to be Suzuha's age because she was 10 and now she's 22. And because of that, she got brainwashed by a bunch of CERN and like Alexis Leskinen's organization and just everybody. So now she's like Moeka, where she's a secret agent, but it's just so confusing because Kaguri has memory issues too. And I wouldn't mind this if I actually liked the plot point. The only plot point that I really like with Kaguri in Zero was the recursive Mother Goose ending. And I thought that was a great ending because it's just Mayuri and Kaguri going back to the past. But overall, Kaguri's just a really messy plot point in Zero that didn't need to be there. I feel like the story would be better without her, but most of the story wouldn't happen without her. So it's just like, what do you do, right? When you make a story with a character this turbulent, how do you fix it? And I couldn't tell you. But next we have Shoshi Makise. I think that's how you pronounce it. If not, let me know down below. But this is Karisu's dad, and this guy is a villain, genuinely a villain. The way that he treats his daughter and everything is just scum. But his twist, revealing that he's the main bad guy, even though he didn't know about the time travel stuff going on, the fact that he inadvertently led to it by killing his daughter, which again is crazy, he has to be higher up than most because he started the events of this. This is Leskinen, aka the main bad guy for Steins Gate Zero and some of the other routes in the visual novel itself, right? This guy, I like him because of his personality and just how evil he is. He's actually scum of the earth because he's the one that brainwashed Kaguri, right? Because it was the future version of himself who did that and sent her back to the past and then entrusted his present day self to handle the rest. And he did. He's actual scum, bro. He's the reason why Kaguri is like that. But overall, let's get into just evil. I like him more than Maki say, and I like him more than Judy by a mile. So I just gotta give him to him, you know. Shout out Luskin. But next we have Moeka. Moeka, she's an interesting character, and I'm talking about the Steins Gate original one, because Zero I feel like is different enough to be included in this list. Overall, she's just a very sad character because of what happened to her and her relation to Mr. Braun. And she was a person who was being used as a piece, and it really makes you wonder how could have things been different if you weren't doing this, you know? If Monica and Okabe would have been friends and stuff like that. And we get to see that in Zero. But next we have Yukitaka Akiha, Ferris's dad. This one is more of my pick personally, not based on anything. Her dad is fine. Her dad literally saves Okabe and Ferris from imminent danger because of 4 degrees Celsius and literally fosters a relationship between those two if you go for that route in the original. And just overall, Ferris's dad is he's fire, bro. Should he be this high up? No. In good faith, I can honestly say no. He should not be here, but he is. So that's the end of B tier. Now we move on to A tier, the great characters, and we start off with Yugo Tenoshi, aka Mr. Braun. And this guy's plot points in the story, even though they may be short and small, they are great. Whether it's with his daughter, whether it's with Suzuha, whether it's with Moeka, and whether it's with him dying at the end, it's like, wow, you are crazy. In Zero, he doesn't have much, so I'm just gonna include those two together. But he does help out. At the end of the day, Mr. Braun helps out Okabe more than Okabe knows, and that he's actually just his friend, even though he works for CERN, right? And the plot point of Mr. Braun being connected to Suzuha because he let her work in his store, right? But then she goes back to the past in the 1970s, and the person who helped Mr. Braun when he was down on his luck was Suzuha, who went back to the past. So it's kind of full circle where one takes care of the other and vice versa. So I just really like that plot point and how important Yugo Tenoji is to Suzuha, but just overall to the main characters, even if it's only Okabe in retrospect. Next up, we have Rukako. I really like Rukako. He's just a nice guy. He doesn't do anything to hurt anybody. And in Zero, he's the opposite, complete opposite, where he's just cool. He's a swordsman like Raiden. And in the game, he's a character that you can have a route with if you choose to go that way. But Lukaku overall, he's generally just a nice guy to Mayuri, to Okabe, to anybody. He's just a very nice and sensitive guy. And because of that, he cries a lot, and he's just very in touch with his emotions, right? Because the game portrays him as a very effeminate man. And with that comes him being portrayed as a pure and innocent soul. And overall, like, I just have no complaints with him. He may be one of the weaker ones for all the routes in this game in Steins Gate Original, but Lukaku's still a strong candidate to be included here. I genuinely liked his inclusion. Next, we have Ferris. Ferris, I really like Ferris. I don't think she's good enough to be put in S tier, but Ferris is a strong candidate for A tier, no doubt. Her route is amazing. Her as a character, she's funny, she's sweet, but she has those underlying tones of loneliness, you know? If your father and mother are so rich and own a huge part of Akihabara, with their name literally being Akiha, then literally how are you supposed to make friends? You know, you are so isolated from other people, you live such a different life from others. How are you going to make friends? And the way she does it is by going to a maid cafe and working there. And by meeting Mayuri, she got to meet Okabe, Daru, Suzuha, Makise, and it just fosters such a great relationship because even though she's a troll for the most part, when Okabe really got to see that side of her after the tournament and even in her own ending, we just got to see the nice version of him. But next, we move on to Suzuha, Zero. Suzuha in Zero and Suzuha in Original are completely different characters and only share their name and appearance alone. Suzuha in Zero, I like her. I think she's great. I think that's great because of the fact that one comes from World War III and one comes from a Big Brother type society. Of course, they would be different, right? They have different ways of handling their situations. But because of that, I feel like Suzuha for me in Zero suffers because I liked Suzuha original so much that seeing her change like this, I don't prefer it. You know, I feel like this is a lesser version of that, but not to be reductive to her character because Suzuha here is more demanding, assertive, and overall just doesn't take any of her dad's nonsense because she told him immediately, like, yo, I am your daughter. I am here for business, all right? And their relationship together, her and Daru, is just so cute when that finally happens and Okabe gets to really see it. But Suzuha and Suzuha original, I just prefer original, you know. Moeka in Zero is a lot better than Moeka in original. This is a timeline where she's actually friends with Okabe, she meets Maho, and they get to hang out with Ferris and everything. That's where we get some cute CGs of them all in the bed together. And overall, this is the one that I was talking about that got to be happy, that didn't have to live under the Mr. Braun messaging thing that she was addicted to, that didn't have to just follow CERN's orders. She became friends with them. So next we have Itaru Hashida, right? And this guy, he's a great character, no doubt. I'm mixing him and Zero together. And funnily enough, this is one of the cases where Zero just does a better job than original because Zero treats Daru's character way better than original did. Way, way better. And the reason why he's down here is because of original. If it was just Zero Daru, then he would be way up in the perfect timeline tier. Because Steins Gate original Daru just has no real substance. While he is Okabe's friend, he does have some good moments. They do not compare to Steins Gate Zero Daru. But at the end of A tier, we have Okabe from Zero. This guy, a lot of people have problems with him because he's whiny and he's very depressed and everything. I like him. I like him because at the end of the day, this is still Okabe, and it makes sense for him to be depressed. For as long as he was, I can see why people take issue with that, but overall, to me, it makes sense because you've been scarred, you've been tortured, you've been hurt by trying to help, but the world just rejects you over and over and over again. It needs this person to be dead. So after every time that you tried and you got some victory by keeping Mayuri alive, why go any further, right? It's the defeatist mindset, but at the same time, the man's been defeated. He's been hurt too much. I understand that route of it, but for it to be the whole game, no. So of course it makes sense when they bring him back up with Maho, with Mayuri, and with Daru when they gave him the motivational speeches, and he came back to being Hoing Kyoma, right? So that rebirth of that character was amazing. It's not the perfect timeline amazing, but it's good enough to be put at the very top of A tier. But next we have the perfect timeline tier. And you can already tell from the start of it who I like here and the people that are missing. So we have Suzuha Amane, the Steins Gate original. She is amazing. I love the plot points for her. I love the endings for her, where one of the endings, her and Okabe go back in time because he's stuck in a Groundhog Day loop. Overall, Suzuha is just great because she adds so much to Steins Gate original. Whether it's working with Mr. Braun and how she affected him, whether it's with Daru and how she affected him, or Mayuri and Okabe, and just overall, her presence is so important. Steins Gate wouldn't exist without Suzuha. She is such a relevant, important character, no matter it's Zero or this one. I just like her personality here more, way more than Zero. Another thing that I want to add, Suzuha somehow manages to be an uplifting spirit, even though we didn't get to see her world, the CERN version of it, in the future. We know it's bleak, a barren wasteland, and just super depressing. And even though she comes from a world like that, she still manages to instill hope into the people here who are dealing with way less. Her impact on so many characters, which I mentioned before, cannot be understated, which makes her a perfect candidate for the perfect timeline tier. So next, we move on to Mayuri Shina. Mayuri is one of my favorite characters of Steins Gate, and she's up here this high because of that, but also low in the perfect timeline tier because I have others, right? Mayuri is great. I love the fact that her and Okabe have that little sister relationship, and I just can't really see them being in a romantic relationship because that's one of the endings that you can choose in Steins Gate Original. Mayuri, similar to Suzuha, is another beacon of hope in this universe, but instead of coming from the future, where Suzuha has that information, Mayuri is just here because she's hopeful and loves life. Even though her grandmother passed away, Okabe was there for her to give her that hope. And so when he's down, even though she doesn't understand what's going on, and she's just a 16-year-old girl, Okabe is like 18 trying to figure out everything, and he's still just a kid too. So she's there for him every time that he's down, whether it's in Zero or in Original. Like, if you remember the swing set scene in Zero, one of the most popular scenes from that show, even because it's memed like crazy, is really important and salient because it's a good Mayuri moment to show how much she cares for her pseudo older brother. And again, that romance thing doesn't play a part in it. To me, it's literally like a sibling type relationship, even though they're not related whatsoever. They're just really good friends that have gotten to that point. Also because Mayuri is so important to the plot and how well connected she is to the other characters, to the point where Barris and Lukaku wouldn't be in the story without Mayuri. She is just too important to not be in the perfect timeline tier. Next though, we have Makise Kurisu. Now, a lot of people may want my head for this, but let me explain. Makise Kurisu, she's a great character. She's the romantic canon relationship for Okabe, and I completely understand that. For me, it's just that the other two characters above her, I feel like are more prevalent for me and also are my favorite characters. When Mayuri was the character who uplifted him and didn't understand what was going on, Makise was the one that uplifted him who did understand, so she could help him out with the scientific problems and the logistics of everything that he was doing. And she could be counted on to understand what was going on with Mayuri, right? Even though every time he came back to the past, he had to re-explain everything to her, right? And through that, a friendship and soon to be a relationship was fostered where they could trust each other. They had similar interests. Makise is a tsundere, Okabe is a chunbiyu, and they managed to mesh together where they would tease each other all the time, but there was a deep underlying care and love for each other that was building throughout. And in the true ending, you get to see that because you get to learn more about Makise and her family, her dad, her mom, and her rough upbringing. We don't get to learn much about Okabe, which kind of sucks because we just don't do that in general. But overall, they trust each other and they build that foundation. And because it's a visual novel, you get that more intimate look into this. And so everyone's favorite character most of the time is Makise because of that. Because you just get so much time with her compared to Lukaku or Ferris or Mayuri or anybody else like Suzuha, right? Makise just gets that attention, and I can see why people like her because of that. And she's just too important to the plot, again, like Mayuri. The true ending is going after her after Mayuri is saved and done because Okabe was too affected by her. He literally loves her, even to the point where it affects him in Zero, where he gets that energy and motivation again to fight, to have that perfect timeline. And that's how it connects back to Steins Gate Zero, because at the end, where they're on top of the roof with the time machine, that's where Zero takes place. That's where Okabe does everything that's needed. So Makise is the sole reason for the true ending existing. And she's just too important to not be in a perfect timeline tier. But next we have Maho Hiyasha. And this is for me. I like Maho a lot. Maho grew to be one of my favorite characters the more I rewatched Zero because she's just such a good character. She's a great addition to Makise, but she doesn't feel like she's necessary to be here, right? If Makise didn't exist, Maho would still be a good character. And even though they're very integral to each other, they're not one and the other need to be together to work. No, Maho was by herself the entire time without Makise in this timeline. In this timeline, instead of Makise being the hope, it's Maho. Maho, Daru, and Mayuri are the hope to bring back Okabe. And Okabe wouldn't be where he's at without that smart Salieri brain right there, right? And on top of that, I just like her personality. I think she's cute. I think she's sweet. And she's funny because she contrasts Makise, where Makise was a dork with the internet stuff. Maho's just a scientist, but she still has that like young adult mindset, so she gets flustered a lot and just overall have a good time. But Maho to me was just a great addition to Zero. Do not regret her ever being included. I just love what she adds to Okabe, right? Especially when he's at his lowest point. I really want to see a timeline where all of them are there. Maho, Moeka, Daru, Mayuri, Suzuha, everybody just there. It's going to be awesome. Because this guy had to be at the top of it. There's no way. Okabe is the best character in this story. Even though he's not my favorite, he is one of my favorites. This man is amazing. And I'm talking about original. This man goes through so much in this game. It is crazy. Okabe is the perfect person to be the main character, right? He's just a guy who's going to college. He's 18. His friend, who's also a nerd, he's 18, and they're hanging out in the room that he's rented out above a repair shop. His younger friend shows up from time to time and basically takes care of him. And any friends that she has have met him, and they just hang out all the time. Mr. Braun downstairs, he's just a cool guy and sort of takes care of Okabe, even though Okabe's kind of an a-hole sometimes. And when everything changes, so does he, right? He's really tested and he learns and he develops and he makes time travel possible for the first time with a microwave, bro, and email. And so as he's learning, he's hitting the golden age. He's just striking gold when it's hot. He meets Suzuha, all this stuff, sees Moeka, and just learning everything. But then it comes crashing down when Mayuri is killed. And even after all that, you gotta remember that Maki said he saw her die and everything, and it's just like so much is building up in his brain, but he doesn't realize it. And then it comes crashing down when she dies. And now he has to find a way to fix it. And this is where Okabe is truly tested because this man learns all about the time travel that he was just studying, learns about Makise, learns about all these characters, and has so many choices in front of him and almost dies multiple times. He is literally playing with the fabric of the world. And he does it. He actually does it. You get to the true ending and he manages to get everything that he wants. He saves his little sister character. He saves Makise. He ends up in the perfect timeline. And he brought the crown back, bro. Okabe is a dog. He did it. And I cannot respect him more for that. And on top of that, the way that he's written, all the way that he interacts with his characters, and just all the struggle and the sympathy that you feel for him. Okabe is an amazing character, and I'll love him for it. This story would not be the same if Okabe Rentaro was not here. So I'm glad that he is. He is the pinnacle of the perfect timeline because he was the one that created it, handcrafted it with his own hands. So, with all these characters amended and everything, this is the updated list. It's just 3 characters I wanted to move. I was actually happy with everybody else the way that I placed them, so I only moved these 3 down below. Everybody else in B tiers, I feel like I can justify them being here. But regardless, thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed. This is my Steins tier list with Steins 0 included. Nothing else. Let me know what you all think about it. Let me know what you guys would change. Or let me know what your tier list itself would be, right? I'm going to try my best to get uploads to you guys. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.